All right, it's 5 o'clock on January 17th. I'd like to welcome everybody to the workshop here for January. Welcome to 2023. Call to order, declaration of a quorum, 6 members present. We do have one absent. She did ask me to read a statement, if that's okay with everybody. This is from Ms. McAdams. I tested positive for COVID and I'm actively sick and don't want to get anyone else sick. I am very disappointed to miss this meeting, particularly the discussions of the workshop items I asked on the agenda. I will be listening in online, but cannot call in. Thank you very much. That will bring us to item C, hearing of citizens. Do I have everything? Okay. During this time, public comments are welcome. The Open Meetings Act prevents us from responding to speakers regarding items not on the agenda. Comments related to the items on the agenda may be discussed during deliberations on that specific agenda item. Please complete the note card and give it to the executive assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those needing an interpreter may have up to 6 minutes. Each person has 1 opportunity at the microphone, regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when time has expired. The board asks that those addressing the board refrain from derogatory comments. And our first card is from Will Hargett. Please come, are we using this one? Okay. Please come to this microphone and you will have 3 minutes. Hey Will, how are you? Good, how are you? Doing well.
Hi, my name is Will Hargett. I'm a sophomore at A&M Consolidated High School. I'm here today to ask you to all allow voters to consider approving funds through a bond this May for renovations to our field house. I have experienced the shortcomings of our facilities for 2 years, as well as multiple summers during boot camp. I have spent numerous hours in our weight room. It is crowded and is unsafe. There's not enough room for us to safely lift in a way that is both beneficial to the workout and keeps everyone around us safe. Some kids have to do their workouts in the locker rooms and in the hallways because there is not enough room in the weight room for all of us to be in there. This is something that's happening now, even with the senior class not participating in workouts this spring. There are about 25 less people this spring than there were last fall during workouts, and we still have to divide up and utilize the hallways and locker rooms to work out. I have also spent my share of time receiving treatment in the sports medicine facility. Ms. Ellie, Dion, and our student trainers do not have enough room to treat those of us needing their care. Because there's a lack of space, we often have multiple athletes on one treatment table and a lot of kids on the floor. During the fall semester, Ms. Ellie and her staff had 2,938 total check-ins to the athletic training room and provided 1,603 treatment rehab sessions. There was one morning this fall that I was in the training room for an hour. During that hour, 27 other athletes were in there to get treatment. There were kids all over the floor, and several of us had to wait outside the room even though we showed up on time for our appointments, because there was not enough space for everyone to be in the sports medicine room at one time. I could tell it was also very difficult for Miss Ellie and Dion to take care of everyone because they were very outnumbered. When we watch film as a team, we have to sit on the floor in the coach's office. Once again, there is inadequate space to do the things we need to do to get better. I know it's unlikely I will ever see any of these improvements completed during my time at Consol, but I'm speaking for the younger kids, the future Tigers who would greatly benefit from this. Please help us have a safe environment to continue to excel for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card is from Roy Gunnels.
Okay, we want to make sure that they can hear you, all right? Here, why don't you come right here, and then they can hear and see you. You good?
Mm-hmm. Hi, my name is Roy Thomas Gunnels. I am a 6th grade student, and I have dyslexia. I go to Runner Academy for dyslexic students. Even though my parents and I have helped start Runner Academy, I am coming to AMCMS next year to play sports, and I really hope to play football at Consol one day like my dad. Please help us putting on this bond on the May Bolton so that kids like me can have a safe place to practice and play sports we love. Go Tigers.
Thank you. That'll bring us to number 3, Brady Spar.
Hi, my name is Braden Spar. I am in sixth grade at Pecan Trail. I look forward to playing baseball and football at Consol. Please work on updating the facilities for me and my friends. We can't wait to be Tigers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, Austin Wilkie.
Hi, my name is Austin Wilkie, and I'm a class of 2025 athlete at Consol, and I play soccer. Please put the A&M Consolidated Athletic Facilities bond back on ballot this May.
Thank you. Caleb Pittman.
Hello, I'm Caleb Pittman. I'm Caleb Pittman. I'm a sophomore at Consol, and I'm here to address the May ballot bond for our athletic weight room. For weight training, we have several athletes who work out in the hallways and locker room areas to get a safe enough distance apart. To receive treatment from the sports medicine staff, the room is full with athletes on the floor and sometimes in the hallways, and is very crowded in a small space. For film, our space is not big enough to fit chairs for everyone, so we have multiple people that sit on the floor. I urge to consider adding this bond to the Bay ballot. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Tim Meadows.
Board, thank you for having us here today. Thank you for putting this workshop on, and thank you to Ms. McAdams for putting this back on the agenda. First off, I'm not from College Station, but I've never been more proud of a group of kids who are willing to come up and stand up for what they believe in. That being said, I don't have anything groundbreaking to tell you that you're not going to hear from people, person after person, about the state of the facilities. I'm pretty sure most of you know the state of the facilities. I think that the system itself has been flawed from the jump when the district split. The idea of separate but equal was extremely flawed because it became separate and ancient. So yes, Consol has a field house. It's not anywhere up to the standard of what's been provided across town. The one concern that I think I will be able to provide is actually in the form of an email that was sent to me this morning by our head athletic trainer at Consol. And there are some issues in this that I didn't even realize, that there are there's no adequate locker room space for our student trainers, our student athletic training staff. There is no facilities for our female staff members on the training staff. They don't have a locker room space. They don't have a separate restroom. Outside of that, I think that as much as anything, what we have here is the remnants of the past. It's what College Station used to fit. Obviously, the population of College Station has changed drastically over the last 30 years. And I think that it's about time that the board put a plan together and put it out on the ballot in a way that has a feasible chance of passing, because we have to overcome an entire half of town who's going to vote no because they don't think we need anything, because they drive by their palace every time they go somewhere and they see something that is shiny and brand new. So I think that the way that this happens is far more important necessarily than just that it happens. I know it's inevitable. I know that Mr. Martindale's putting together a comprehensive plan with the architects and all of those things. What you see here is a plea for something to become equitable. We pay the same taxes that everybody that is zoned to College Station High School pays. We would like to see a return on our investment and our money in our community. We want to provide better for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly Meadows. Okay, Thank you. Trace Meadows?
Hi, my name is Trace Meadows. I'm in baseball and football, and I'm here talking about the facilities. So I have a few things for baseball and then a few things for football. Baseball locker room, there's 50 plus guys right there in there right now, and if you walk in there, it is a absolute mess. Bags sprung across the room. There's just not enough space in there for everybody. Top of the lockers, there's like 30 bags sitting on top because they can't fit their stuff in the lockers. And the lockers are one locker and then a locker below, so people are all on top of each other. And then there is with the showers in there. Most of the people have to shower after practice, and there's only 7 shower heads, and it takes absolutely forever. And then there's also a lack of ventilation in the locker room. So when those showers are on, it is blistering hot inside the locker room. For football, the training, or just in general, the training room is way too small. Like others before me have said, people are on the ground. I've been in there myself, laying on a yoga mat, getting a stem for my ankle. It's just the room is not adequate for what's needed for the amount of people that are in there. The weight room is, again, unsafe. We were just in there lifting for baseball. We had everybody in the baseball for console in there today, and I could barely walk around. There was just so many people, and every rack was filled to a brim, and then it's just too many people in there at once. And also our locker room for football is old and outdated, just like the baseball one. It's same issues. So I would just like to bring this to y'all's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Cannon Kieschnick?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cannon Kieschnick, and I am in favor of putting the bond of athletic facility improvement back on the ballot. I'm a sophomore baseball player at A&M Consolidated, and I come before y'all today to address the health and safety hazards I endure daily at A&M Consolidated. My first issue I'd like to address is the safety risks during a baseball-only workout. After school today, we had 60 kids in a weight room with 16 racks and 8 lifting platforms, and we had to stack up 4 players per rack, per platform, and we had 3 groups of baseball players lifting at a time. We had to utilize hallways as well as the space in front of the racks, in front of the dumbbells to work out, and there was a lot of safety hazards that come along with that, dropping weights on toes, people getting hit with barbells. The second thing that I'd like to talk about is the size of our training facilities. If I go in there for rehab in the mornings, we schedule appointments and there's 10 to 12 people in there at all times, and having to roll out or doing small rehab things, I've had to go outside into the training room, not outside of the training room, into the workout facilities, and I've had to roll out while other people are lifting, and that causes people to step on me. I could get hurt easily doing that, and that would hinder me from being able to play and compete at a level during high school. That's all I have for y'all today. Thank y'all for hearing me.
Thank you. Jack Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Williams, and I'm a sophomore at A&M Consolidated High School. I play football, run track, and lift weights every day. Our facilities are outdated from the old weights or the cramped trainer's office. The weight room is way too crowded for us to safely work out and get better. I am here today to ask you to improve the Consol Fieldhouse. Improvements back on the ballot this May. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, of course. You're up.
Um, Hi, I'm Molly Meadows. I am a freshman at Consol. I play softball. And I guess one thing that could really help with the bond and helping our facilities is the field house. Just kind of outdated, could really use like, I don't know, revamping, I guess. That's what we're gonna call it. And the softball hitting cages would really benefit from it. I mean, I'm not even positive the lights work in there. It would just really benefit us as like a whole team to have better cages, have a better field house, have somewhere to go when it's too cold.
Thank you. All right, that will bring us to item D1, consideration and discussion regarding scheduling a management oversight workshop in the area of human resources during spring 2023. Mr. Martindale.
Good deal. Thank you, Mr. White. Board members. Actually, I was going to visit with the group. We had shared some dates for you via doodle poll. Thursday, March the 30th, and Tuesday, April the 11th were the two dates where 6 of 7 can make it. There were no dates that were provided on the doodle poll. We could get all 7. One of those dates was one that Ms. McAdams could not attend. I think this is not a rush to schedule, Mr. Horak. We just typically do these during the spring, the oversight meetings, one in the fall and one in the spring. So we could hold on to this one to next month when everyone's in attendance and kind of talk our way through it. We could also possibly provide some additional dates to see if we could get the whole group. So I think we'll probably hold on to that one until she's able to join us. Again, there's not a rush here. We're just establishing a date for a meeting.
Yeah, I don't see that being a problem with, I think the dates were end of March and beginning of April. So I think we're okay on that. That'll bring us to item number 2, consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding the CSISD legislative priorities for the 88th Texas legislative session. Mr. Martindale.
Okay, the group has this. We discussed this in significant detail in December. We had some suggested revisions and edits, made those, attached that to transmittal. So what you have in front of you is recommended final. There's no significant adjustments. We did some word cleaning on that, some semantics, some of those types of things based on some of the feedback. So unless there's significant questions or suggestions for significant edits, we'll be looking for possible action on this item.
Ms. Martin, are these posted on the CSISD homepage?
Upon pending board approval, yes. We would post these, and I also utilize these when I go to Austin and Capitol and meet with our elected officials, yes. But we put nothing, not until after there's action.
I move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Hall, second by Ms. Nolan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. That will bring us to item 3, consideration and discussion regarding a possible amendment to the 22-23 compensation plan to include an early resignation/retirement incentive. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. White and board members. We have Ms. Strauss, our Chief Financial Officer, and Dr. Molly Perry, our Chief Administrative Officer, is going to join us to talk us through some details. This is just a conversation item for this evening, just to get feedback, your feelings on this particular possibility. If there were any recommendations, that would be in the upcoming months. So discussion item. So ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. Good evening, Mr. Horak, members of the board. At your place, you will find a draft proposal related to tonight's agenda item regarding the early resignation notice incentive. This would, if approved at a later date, be an amendment or an addendum to our current 22-23 compensation plan. You know, over the last several years, we've had a number of conversations about the importance of our recruitment and retention efforts. And as we see the pool of qualified educators who are seeking employment continue to dwindle, we are doing everything possible to really ensure that not only are we continuing to recruit, but also to retain the very, very best educators in our classrooms and those who support the instructional process. And so This is not something that we've done before here in College Station ISD. However, it is a practice that is fairly common in other districts across the state. And what this would do for us is really support our vacancy planning efforts. It would provide a monetary benefit to those individuals who choose to submit their resignation or retirement early. And by early, we are targeting March 20th, which is that first Monday after spring break, in order to really begin to better understand which positions we're going to need to fill and begin the process of that. So I do want to just talk you through a few of the key points on this and have some conversation about any areas that we might need to discuss further or gather additional information on before we might bring it back in the future. So you'll see at the top of the document provides just a little bit of an overview regarding contracts for professional employees and how that resignation without penalty can happen up to 45 days before the first day of instruction. Well, the first day of instruction does vary from district to district around the state, but that typically falls right around that first week of July for most school districts. And as you can imagine, trying to recruit teachers, especially after July and into August, is exceptionally difficult. So we want to really push this up as much as possible so that we can plan for staffing. So in this proposal, what we would be looking at are those professional staff who are primarily responsible for either directly providing or supporting instructional needs. And the reason that we've really expanded that beyond just teachers is that we know that other positions can create teacher vacancies. So if we have an assistant principal vacancy, now suddenly one of our teacher staffs, who is maybe a teacher leader in the district, is likely to transition into that AP role. And so we really want to ensure that we're ultimately seeing the impact in the classroom, but we know that that domino effect can certainly be a part of the puzzle as we staff up for the new school year. So this would not apply to at-will temporary or part-time employees, and the employee must be in good standing, meaning we're not seeing any sort of administrative leave in connection with misconduct or have been recommended for termination or non-renewal. And those ultimate determinations would be made by the superintendent of schools. We would require that the employee continue to work for the remainder of their contract year, meaning they're not able to turn this in and then go ahead and resign effective immediately, because the payment would actually occur at their very last check. And so this would be above and beyond our general resignation requirements. We would have them turn in not only their resignation, but also an agreement acknowledging the eligibility requirements and criteria associated with human resources in person by that Monday, March 20th date. I mentioned previously the amount of the incentive. Ms. Draws can provide a little bit more information regarding what we would anticipate this to look like overall. But ultimately, we would, if approved, share this information with our employees to allow them time to consider whether this is something they would like to do or not. To provide a little more context, oftentimes we, after distributing the contracts for the new school year, we'll start to see those resignations of folks who intend to maybe move out of the area or retire come in generally around April. And so this would really give us some additional time, give our principals additional time to be able to plan for those vacancies and start recruitment efforts.
So looking at the cost of this particular program, there's a number of things that we look at. One is what traditionally have been the number of resignations for these particular employment groups that we would be considering for this. And then it's normally not 100%. I've done this previously. It's not 100% because those who are not sure, of course, we want them to take the time and make sure it's the right decision for them. But those that do know, to go ahead and submit it. So we're looking at a percentage. But I would recommend we use ESSER funds. I know those are normally for retention, but the purpose is also for the continuity of education, and that is ensuring that we have quality teachers and that our vacancies are filled. So looking at those percentages, I would estimate probably not to exceed around 40,000. Again, those are estimates, and this is one time only. So we would be using one of our ESSER funds that's available and amending it to include this particular item.
It may also be helpful to know that this really would specifically be for current year. As you know, we would bring a new compensation plan to you all this summer for the subsequent school year, so we would evaluate the effectiveness of the plan as well as availability of funds before we continued in the future as well. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So, two questions, and you just answered one of them, which this wouldn't affect the general budget if we're using ESSER funds.
Correct.
Okay. And it's on a year-by-year basis, so we're not committing to future years. The only other question, y'all may have already looked into this or thought about it, but occasionally the lawyer in me comes out. On the requirement that the employees be in good standing, I noticed it said they can't be on administrative leave in connection with misconduct alleged or substantiated. Are there any potential legal issues, or is that a quick phone call y'all can make to our legal counsel to say if it's just alleged at this point, if there's any potential problems there with preventing them from taking advantage of this program?
We can certainly look into that. If we were in a circumstance such as that, we would absolutely consult with our legal counsel, but also we would go through the process of any sort of investigation prior to making a final determination.
Right. I'm just referring to the policy itself. If we could maybe check on that in advance. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant and creative. Like you say, anything we can do to help speed up the projections and the hiring process, because it's a very fast-paced hiring environment right now. So I'd like to move that we accept we don't have
We would, as far as timeline goes, bring this back to you all for any additional discussion in February. And should you all wish to move forward, we could take action at the regular meeting in February and immediately communicate. That would still give our employees just about a month to consider whether or not they would like to move forward if they already know they're going to be resigning or retiring.
All right, I also like to just say thank you for doing this, thinking about this, because that's one of the things that we charged you with is retention and recruitment. So I think this is smart to look into this, consider this.
Thank you.
Just one more edge.
Anything else? Thank y'all very much. That brings us to item 4, consideration discussion regarding capacity issues associated with Kids Club. I believe we are going to table this one. As Ms. McAdams had requested, we put this on the agenda. Obviously, with her absence, I don't think it's right to proceed with this without her here. So we are going to table this more than likely until the next board meeting workshop, or board workshop. That will bring us to item 5, consideration and discussion regarding needs associated with A&M Consolidated High School Fieldhouse. So we put this on the workshop because we want to make sure we have this discussion. We've invited John and Amy here as well in case we have any questions as it pertains to the field house, obviously any kind of bond or anything like that. So we just wanted to open this to discussion for the board members, just to visit and kind of see what thoughts they have and how they feel we needed to proceed. So I'm going to open that up to whoever kind of wants to share their comments.
I think the biggest thing, my biggest concern about putting on with May, and also with respect to the legislative priorities regarding ballot language, would the ballot language in May be worded much differently than it was in previous years? Because I really felt like that was a hurdle.
So this May election, this coming May, all of the rules that applied to the last ones in November and the prior year still apply. So the ballot language remains the same, and the process. There hasn't been any changes.
Are you asking specifically about the facilities or the overall language?
Ballot language.
I think, in my opinion, when I was looking at it, I think that's what hurt the bond initiative was not the compelling need to update for health and safety, but the way it was written in the ballot, I think was the biggest hurdle. And if it's just gonna be the same verbiage again in May, have we really changed anything? Because I think you're making it, we've had how many people, students who are directly impacted by it, but they're not gonna be on the ballot. Those students aren't gonna be on the ballot. And so I just wonder, are we exposing ourselves to the same risk? And then what's the second and third order effects? But every time we keep putting something on the ballot, do we erode public sentiment? Does it affect our bond rating? Or does it just look bad? So yeah, you answered my question, Mr. Odds. It's not going to change much. That's just one thing where we got to think about.
Logistically, if we were to put something on the May ballot, is it February 17th would be the last day to do that?
February 17th is the last day you can call a special election for May. That's
Okay.
the last date.
And then if I recall from the 2021 bond, we passed, it was passed in November, but then it took us till February to sell the bonds.
That's true.
So if it was on the ballot in May, probably looking at August by the time the bonds could be sold?
If we could work through that, not necessarily. We do probably need at least 60 days to work through the process, and if we're going to bid it, decide on the method. But
So
it
maybe
could,
July?
could probably be late July, early August.
And so by the time we got the funds, construction would either be in the middle of a school year or
Well, as far as
the middle of football season?
the delivery of funds is not as important as the rest of the items, because you can do repayment resolutions. There's a number of things that can be done. So the timing of when bonds could be sold, in my opinion, it's important because, you know, we only have so much available, but the construction is not going to move very quickly at that point. We still have to get architects involved, do drawings, specifications, bids. So that can't be done in the first 45, 60 days.
Are you getting in an overall timeline of what it would, is that what you're
Well, I mean, we'll put facts on the table is to understand. I mean, I guess first I'd say I don't think anyone on the board, well, I'll speak for myself because I can't speak to the board. We don't disagree that it's a health and safety issue. We wouldn't have, I was on the bond committee in 2021, and the reason we put it on the ballot was because we saw a need. But we need to consider if, I mean, the community is requesting us to consider it. So then we have to draw out the timeline. What does that look like? If you, a May versus November, when do we get to start construction? How does it impact? And what temporarily fixes might be considered? Because what I heard was we need athletic training, more room and more locker space. I don't know if,
So I think Mr. Hall can speak to timeline better than me, because I think you need to look at construction timeline more so than the selling of the bonds.
So I would say, generally speaking, if it were to pass in May, we would need a couple of months to go through the design process with our coaches, figure out just exactly what we needed in this particular project. Of course, that could overlap some with what Mrs. Draws was talking about, is actually obtaining the funds a little bit later, August, whatever time frame that would be. But and we could overlap this a little bit with permitting with the city. Yeah, the big question for me would be, when could we start construction? I would see it's something like probably a 7 to 8 month process, actual construction. We might be able to whittle a little bit off of that, but it would be, as I recall, about a 4,000 square foot, a little bit bigger for the training facility portion of this, which would be attached to the stadium field house. So that portion would be new construction, drill piers working all the way up, foundation, the works for that. That would be really the long lead item. So I'd say construction would be about an 8-month process for whenever we could get it approved from the school board and get off and running, assuming we had our design in place by that point.
Because I'm thinking the same thing, Mr. Hall, that my first thing is, okay, I accept, or I agree there is a need for it. So what's the best solution? Is it budgetary? Is it a bond? If it's a bond, is it a May or November? And so that's why have we looked at it in the budget, or I know with the architects, looking at their strategic planning, does that impact prioritization or the timeline, because I think the timeline's going to be the critical thing for me. If we did through a budget, finding monies over the next few years versus a bond one-time thing.
Let's do separate tax rates. You take it from M&O versus INS. You can't.
Because some of the stuff that was brought up by the students was, to me, in my mind, most possibly O&M. The refurbishment with the tax rates. Are we constrained with that?
Yes.
Okay.
We can't change, it's if we do it with bonds, it's the INS tax rate. So we have to utilize that side. We don't have fund balance to pull those funds from the general side. So yes, it would have to be a bonded indebtedness. And I do want to clarify on the construction, Mr. Hall, you did say 8 months, but that was actual construction. So then you would add all of the architect time because, we have an idea of what it would look like, but the architects have not drawn that. So that's 8 months of hard construction time, but then we have to add all the preliminary time before that.
Can you remind all of us exactly what was on that bond? Because I don't, if we were to put it on the May ballot, we wouldn't be changing it up much from what was previously on the ballot, correct?
That's my understanding.
Right, so
we
can you
had
just
an
remind all of
addition.
us?
Right, we did have an addition to the field house that would mainly be a training area, but it could have had some others. There was some renovations inside of the athletic field house. There was.
When you say athletic field house, do you mean the weight room?
Yes.
Okay.
There was some funds for the press box. Some of that was for HVAC and cosmetic issues. It was not a new press box. We've done some of those, so we would need to reassess that part. And then I believe there was a very, very small amount, a little over 100,000 for sound system upgrades, but we have done that as well.
Okay, so I've been in the weight room portion of the field house. I have not ever been in boys' locker rooms. So did that include, when you say the field house, does that include the locker rooms that we heard about tonight? The football locker rooms, the baseball locker rooms, the softball? What was it?
I'm not as sure exactly what we would still do. We did add some lockers into the field house last summer. We did do that, and we did some refurbishing of lockers.
Okay. But it sounds like we need more.
Yeah, but you have to realize this is its own proposition.
Right.
And so the other field house could be separate. We'd have to check with legal counsel. We'd only be dealing with the one here at Tiger Field.
Oh, so we're talking.
This
when we
one
talk
is
about,
connected with Tiger Field.
Okay, so the locker rooms are all over on the field house that is like in the parking lot? Is that where all the locker rooms are? I don't even
they're
know.
in both sides, right? They're both facilities. They're in
Okay.
both.
In both field houses.
Okay. Okay.
But this particular, the field house here is tied to their requirement that it is with a stadium that holds 1,000 spectators. And so it's separate from the other one.
Got it.
And College Station High School was on the bond originally as well, right?
College Station High School had, I think, some sound system increase issues that would be dealt with.
That's what I recall. So would that,
It was the original bond.
It was in
I
part
think
of
to
the
your-
100 and something thousand for the
Of that.
sound system that included some for College Station High School.
okay. And so I don't know if we would we want that as well? Or is that?
The sound system at Tigerfield has been fixed. I honestly don't know if it has been at College Station High School. I'd have to check.
I'm sitting closest, and they're pretty fast. So careful what I say. I was not elected yet. I was campaigning when this was on the bond, and we got friends and community members that I've heard from. Some of them are nice messages, some of them aren't. But I can say a couple things. I don't think anyone's against you. I don't think anyone is against trying to help you guys. But just understand, and I can't speak for everyone, but I think I speak for everyone when I say that everyone wanted this to pass, right? Everyone wanted this to happen, and it didn't because athletics bonds changed. And a lot of them across the state didn't pass. I think only like 37, 35% of athletics bonds passed when this got shifted. And so it's a learning curve for all of us, and it's new for all of us. But just know that board members and educators cannot campaign, right? All we can do is educate. So just keep that in mind if we can get this, if and when we get this on, that we can't campaign. But 5 of the 7 board members are zoned for CASAL. So just understand that everybody wanted this to happen. It didn't, and it was close. So I hope we can come to a resolution. We're working on it. There's a lot of things there. But this is one community, I would say, not a separate one. And hopefully we can get this fixed.
So for all practical purposes, if the bond is on the May ballots, or there's, let me rephrase, because there's a whole process we have to go through for bonds. So if a bond is on the ballot for May versus a bond on the ballot in November, for all practical purposes, what is the time difference in getting these young men and ladies into that facility? Because I know like one of the issues, for example, is there's really 2 aspects to this, right? There's renovations and there's the addition. And you can't really do the renovations until you do the addition, so you can move equipment around and space and so forth. And so just that's kind of, what's the practical difference time-wise?
I don't know that I could tell you a difference as far as time, like in months, but I can tell you the logistical challenge would be a little different depending on if it was May or November. Part of the process, of course, we have to go through with the architectural firm to work through the design itself, which that's going to be about the same no matter how you do it. But part of it is going to be if we have to, for instance, come up with alternate locations for all of the students, student athletes and staff who would be in the stadium field house during the course of the school year. If we have to do that, it's a little different. Maybe if it's in the fall semester as opposed to the first part of the summer or something like that. Still, the construction is going to go over into the school year on either end of that. So. It's kind of a trick. We haven't really processed through the 2 different scenarios to compare each other. I'd say generally speaking, if it were in May, we could do the whole thing a little bit more quickly. We would, I'd say, at least be in the game for having it finished up the following summer of 24. If we did it in May of 23, it would at least be in the range of discussion for getting the permits and the design and the construction all put together. If we waited until November of 23, I think it would be pushing hard to get into the fall of 24. I don't think we could squeeze it out quickly enough to have it ready for football season of 24 if it passed in November of 23. That's just generally speaking.
A bit of the same concern as Mr. Decker and Mr. Payne, because I know the bond language, the legislature changed that in 2020. And so this was really, that 2021 bond was kind of the first go-round with all the, in my opinion, ridiculous language you have to include on there. So, yeah, it's hopefully the legislature will do the right thing this session. So we'll see.
Quite, and maybe we didn't get that far. Because I'm trying to even remember 2021. But since we put Prop D was on the ballot, did we have an idea, like a general idea of what we were going to do with the student athletes? Because that's going to take the whole space. I mean, even if if I could cut a check and we could start today, you're going to displace quite a bit of people. So what were we going to do in the interim while we were remodeling? Do we remember?
Well, I'll just put it in these terms, Mr. Hall. Back in 2008, when I did it before, we had to take over the entire stadium field house at that point. And across the street, we had to scrape and replace the multi-sport field house. We took that all the way to dirt and came back up and built a whole new building at that point. So since we were taking both of those out, that put everybody out of a locker room at that point. And so we had to put up portable buildings over there. We had to put up some for the baseball team at the time, hook up water, drainage for showers and restrooms. So we had a little small portable building village, if you will, over there, just about where the sand pit is right now by the baseball field. We had that little green area was filled up with 3 or 4 portable buildings there. On the other side of the street, we were pushing out like freshman football and several other sports teams over there. We had about 4 portable buildings over there, right next to where the softball field would be, kind of along where that where the softball batting cage is, kind of that area, kind of towards the band practice area. So all of that to say is, yeah, it took it was a logistical trick to pull all of that stuff off and get everybody moved out of there so that we could capture those areas completely. Now, like I said, we scraped and replaced the multi-sport field house in its entirety. We didn't do exactly the same over across the street at the stadium field house, the one we're talking about now. We gutted the interior of it, moved and pushed and pulled walls and redid kind of the interior of that space. Built a little bit new square footage on the front. That's where I'll say the old head coach's office was, kind of in that front corner of it where we have the ticket area and stuff like that. That's a new piece of structure up there. And we went back and added one more piece, which was the baseball locker room, kind of in that, I'll say the southeast corner of that. So we stretched the stadium field house by, I'm gonna say probably 1,500 to 2,000 square feet at that time. So, but you're right, one of the biggest questions that I would immediately have is what do we do with all the people that are in there in the interim while we're doing the construction? And so and we would definitely be looking at some of that. Now, this particular round, the multi-sport field house is not on there. So I'm assuming some of the teams would have to crowd in there, and we'd probably have to do some sort of combination of portable buildings and pick up the remaining capacity with that. Big logistical challenge, all of it.
And the portable buildings have to be purchased, or can they be rented or leased? It's an Amy question.
So I would guess that we would rent them because at this point, I mean, if we purchase them, I'm not sure where we would put them afterward. So I would guess that we would rent them. We would look into both options, but we have to have a place to put them when we're done.
I think the last portable we bought was around 130,000 delivered.
I would guess so. It has not been bought since I've been here.
I thought we bought one
that
for a Head Start.
We tried under
Okay.
the grant, but that did not go through.
Okay.
For reference point, we rented all the ones before 2008 because some of them were very particular to needing plumbing and stuff like that we really didn't have a use for after that. So we rented those utilizing bond funds at the time to pull all of that off.
Mr. Martindale, do you know if any of the other districts that had failed athletics bonds before put any of them back on since, what was that, the 21 election?
I would have to go back and look, Dr. Payne. I don't have that off the top of my head. I'd hesitate to answer because
That's fine. I have no idea
sure.
either.
Now, even outside of the language, Dr. Payne, I also worry about voter burnout.
I was going to talk about that too.
What's that?
I was going to talk about that too. That's one of my fears.
Yeah.
It's my worries.
If it goes down twice, that's extremely detrimental.
Well, not only that, but we did the 2021 bond that 3 of the 4 passed. 2022, we had to do the voter tax ratification election. I don't know where I'm going with this. I will say this. One of the, and I've talked to various members of the Consol community over the last couple of years about these issues. I finally had a break in my schedule and was able to go to a Tiger Club meeting last week, and the frustration is palpable. In you're dealing with a situation where you've got a 10-year-old facility versus a decades-old facility, and let's just say I understand their frustration in outside of just design differences over 40 years and so forth. When you've got a field house that was built for a small 4A school as opposed to a large 5A school and so forth, it's tough to deal with. But such is the situation, and that's why, and this is actually one of the things that bothered me at that meeting was to have people stand up and the school board doesn't care. The school board doesn't believe there's any facility inequities and so forth. Again, as one member of the school board, I can't disagree more. That's why this was on the 2021 bond. That's why we've, within the constraints of our general budget, our maintenance budget, have tried to make improvements. It just, the bond failed and the community didn't support it. And so that's what we're stuck with. And so now the question becomes a strategic question of where do we go from here? And on the negative side, it keeps getting more expensive. On the positive side, I don't know what the positive is other than if we feel that, and this is kind of the way I'm leaning, is it's got a better chance of passing in November. Hopefully the bond language has changed by then. Again, that's hopes and dreams and rainbows and lollipops, so who knows. And it stinks. It honestly stinks. But then is it more cost effective? Is it more people effective to have more of it where we have time in a summer to get it done, to get the big stuff done and so forth? And I don't know the answers to all those questions. I don't know the answers to lots of questions. Those are just kind of the thoughts that have been going through my mind. So I will stop rambling for the moment.
So I've held back and let y'all talk. It is hard for me. I don't disagree with any of you athletes. I was an athlete, I think, at Consol in '97. One of my teammates is here from basketball. Couldn't believe he showed up, but it brings back memories. I see a lot of my classmates that I went to school with then, and that's why I moved back here. So I came back home because we have a great school district. And in my role as a board trustee, I have to represent every student in the district and what's best for them in the future of the district. Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think we can address those things. There's a chain of command, a channel for anything health, safety wise. I think we can address those things and we can go through the proper channels to do that. I don't know what has gone on over there because I don't privy myself to those kind of things. I don't feel as a school board member, I'm supposed to be in the management side. I'm supposed to be on the oversight side. So I'm supposed to just make sure that every student in this district is safe and every student in this district has a chance to make it like I have in my life and hope for my kids that are in this district. So it's not about whether we put it on in May, whether we put it on in November, whether we push it down. As much as I'd love to make those decisions right now, I don't know that we can because it's a bigger scope. It's a bigger scope than what we projected and what we put out there in November of '21. And I'm sitting here going, man, it would have been nice to have X in '21 and what we proposed. And I brought it up because I was curious. The field house renovations, addition, accommodate trainers and treatment of athletes. I mean, you guys said it all. So it would have been awesome to have all that. But I also look at the future and go, why not get Y And this looks totally different. This is huge. This is a bigger spectrum now. It's a bigger scope for what can be offered. And there's ways around it. Prop D and the athletic bonds and how those are done now, we've learned a little bit. We've learned a little bit about how that works. And we've talked to districts and asked them about their success rates and things like that. So I think if we take all those factors into play and come up with a cumulative plan, I think we can make this bigger than what we even proposed back in 21. There is a time frame to have to wait on that, and it's probably November. I don't know that. But we identified the need and we put it out there. And I mean, the voter burnout, I don't know, it's possible, who knows? But the way in which we structure this bond is going to be critical more than when we put it out. Because you can always put out a bond, and we can always put out the details of why and the identification of why it's needed. But you're right, Dr. Payne, yeah, we can't campaign on it. I can't do that. But I can sit back and recognize there's a need. So if the community feels that way, then we can move forward. But when we break it down into what it could have been and what it can be, we have an opportunity to make it bigger than it was. And a lot of things happened after I graduated that I spoke up for just in my basketball family. And that was for all the kids that got to come behind me. So I can't remember who said it, but I resonate with that because I feel the same way. I might not, and it might have been you, Will, I don't know. But it's not about you right now because, yeah, you might not be able to reap the benefits of this, but the kids behind you will. And that's neat to see. It stinks to be on this end right now, but it's neat to see. And it's neat to come back and support those kids and see what they've developed and what they've made themselves out of. So I know that this is a tough one to just kind of swallow and deal with and try to really figure out. And I just think there's an opportunity for a bigger field house, call it what you want, athletic exposure at Consol. And I don't know if we can make that decision that quick by May. That's just where I'm at right now. So by February, correct.
Less in exactly a month.
So.
And Mr. Wright, we're all on the same team here. It's I'll say as one board member, it's also very frustrating when we hear that, well, this is a purple board, and so it doesn't care about A&M Consolidated High School. Well, six of the 7 board members, either 6, I think, other than Dr. Payne, have graduated from Consol, have kids at Consol, have kids that are going to go to Consol. It's not and I honestly hoped when I got on the board in 2019 that the purple versus maroon would go away. Again, everybody recognizes that there's a 10-year-old facility versus a decades-old facility. And prior boards, Mr. Hall mentioned one project, have put millions of dollars into Consol, and there's millions more that need to be spent. But that there's a process, and y'all heard Ms. Dries talking about, and Mr. Hall talking about M&O funds versus INS funds, and those are all rules that we have to live by. and the amount of our fund budget and everything else. And I know everybody sitting in the audience tonight is like, well, it's just a bunch of excuses. And I can tell you from sitting on the board with these and the prior two people that were on the board for the last 2 years, this outside of COVID, this issue has been probably taken up more of our time and has been given more thought as to what is the best way to go about handling this. And so everybody does care. Everybody's trying to figure out the best way to get this done for an A&M Consolidated High School. And we can continue to discuss it. But it's I don't know. Again, I'm probably just preaching to myself more about the purple versus maroon stuff. But a lot of the problems that both athletic departments have are the same. Dealing with track coaches leaving, head football coaches leaving. That's a problem. And then you hear from College Station High School, and well, Consol has 3 gyms. Consol has a covered baseball, et cetera, et cetera. So the health and safety issues need to be dealt with, and we've started doing that, and we'll continue to do that. But what are we going to do to get this bond passed to benefit at least the sophomores on down, unfortunately, as Mr. Horak mentioned, and the younger kids? What is the best, most effective way to do that? And that's what we're trying to figure out. So I will get off my soapbox again.
I think I've heard every single person say tonight that this is important and a top priority. And same goes for me. For all of the renovations that need to happen in this district, this is top on my list, right? And I know, you've all said it tonight. I think we all know the importance of updating these facilities and getting these facilities safe for our kiddos. So it's going to happen. I don't think we're not going to not let it happen. Am I correct? It's going to happen. The question is when and the scope. And like you were saying, Mr. Horak, I do think, and that's why I was asking about what was on that 21 bond, because we're already hearing that scope has grown. Just even tonight, that scope has grown so much. And I'm hoping that facility study that the report that we get next month, I'm hoping that they have gone through this, and I have a feeling they're going to find even more things that we need to fix. And I think we need to address that as well. This has become bigger. And when it comes to voter burnout and community support, this is one of those things that I hope that when we get this on the ballot, I hope everyone realizes that everyone in our community realizes that this just raises us all up. When this passes and we make our facilities better, it doesn't matter where it happens. It makes us all better. It makes our schools better, more attractive, makes the entire community more attractive. So hopefully, when we do get this figured out, and when we get this on the ballot, whatever amount of stuff that it is, I do hope that the community sees the benefit to everybody, to the entire community. And that's my soapbox.
So there were some very specific things that I think it was mainly the students brought up tonight in regard to, I think maybe Mr. Meadows also, but the locker room space, the lack of space for the female staff, so forth and so on. Can we look at, if we do not move forward with a bond, or even if we do, because again, we're talking about months down the road, can we look at some temporary solutions to give these guys some more, whether it's, I hate portables, but something like that, or to kind of alleviate some of this overcrowding in the short term until hopefully the community approves an actual expansion of the field house.
Yes, sir.
Can I add to that? It almost sounds like maybe we could even look at staffing, maybe, because it sounds like we might be understaffed. I'm opening up a whole nother can of worms here, aren't I?
Well, no, I think Mr. Starnes, Ms. Simak have really started to look at that too.
Right.
But yeah, that's obviously, something that
Right.
needs to be
So it
followed
sounds like
up
it's
on.
more than just space.
Mr. Ben, to answer your question, yes, we can look into different options for helping where we can. I'm not sure exactly what those would be right now, whether they're portable buildings or some other creative use of space. But from my perspective, yes, we can definitely look into some of that.
So what would be the best, I guess, procedure for you to get a official list of these types of issues? I mean, should that come from the athletic director or the campus coordinator, or?
Every other week, I sit down with Kevin Starnes and Megan Simank and the other athletic coordinators, and we have a sit down and talk about. At the beginning of the meeting, he's nice enough to let me knock my portion of the meeting out so I can get on out of there. But we talk about facilities needs. So we could definitely dig in deeper to that, working with him, and I'm assuming Mr. Martindale and the cabinet would be key cogs in that gear as well as we work through some different options. But we talk about facilities issues every other week.
Yeah. Okay. And so, how quickly? Because I think another thing I've heard consistently is we just need hope that this is going to happen. We need to know there's a plan to make this happen. In how quickly could we get a report back or get some type of plan in place of, hey, we need this much extra space for athletic training, and this is our plan. We need this, this extra number of lockers, and this is our plan. And the plan may, again, not solve all the problems right away, but how quickly can we get a plan to deal with those immediate issues?
Well, I think first we need to get the facility condition and long-range plan back from our architects, which they will present a summary to you in February, because they've delved in a lot more detail, and they're looking at instructional components in the education and the future as well, and what we would need for those. So we've had discussions, but we'll be finishing that up over the next 4 weeks and bringing that to you. So I think that is a key component in coming up with what some of these alternatives might be and what needs to be done.
Okay. So, but is this to a certain extent a different issue, a short-term Band-Aids, a different issue than that long-term planning?
I think that it is, but some of the things that they might identify will help us in coming up with some of those short-term solutions when we see that full report. And that's just my opinion. I think it might bring forth some ideas, and it's going to bring forth what the priorities might be.
Okay.
The challenge, I think, what you're getting at with that feedback is deciding in a month if this would make the May ballot, right? Because if we get it in February, we won't have any time to take that information to pull in for the ballot for May, correct?
I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just thinking about, Mr. Ben mentioned, what short-term things could we do to help alleviate some of that overcrowding? And that's on the short term, but this facility report might help us with that and show us where some of the greatest needs are and give us some ideas.
But let's just say before football practice starts, or cross-country practice, or volleyball practice at the end of the summer. I mean, could we have, not going to hold you to it, because I know y'all have to deal with a lot of regulations and permits and all that kind of stuff, but can we have something in place by that point to alleviate some of these issues?
I think it depends on what it is we decide. That portable buildings, I think that sounds like a quick solution, but there's permitting involved. If we purchase them, there is a long lead time. I can't even imagine the lead time on that when we've been waiting. March will be a year for buses that we still don't have because of parts and delivery. I think it depends on what those solutions are. I'm not sure we could get portable buildings in place. If we start in March, bring it to the March board meeting, I'm not sure we could get them in place for summer practices. But maybe there's some other things that we could do other than a portable.
I think at this point, we just need to get those items identified, those concerns identified.
Absolutely.
And work through those appropriately. And, because I think there's a whole lot up in the air at this point. And so I think the sooner the better that those are identified through the athletic staff there at Consol, and move forward from there through the AD and you guys and put a plan together, and y'all can get back to us on that. So that obviously we can present that and have that out of where we're headed in the future. Does that work?
Yeah. And I think just again reiterates the importance of communication from the school level up to the administration level as far as what is needed. And so hopefully the new campus coordinator and so forth, and that we have a new AD is going to help with that also. So hopefully things work a little bit smoother.
All right. Anything further?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to just really talk about this a little bit more. About, number one is putting together a bond that would pass, that we feel confident that would pass, correct? Meaning that, and then part of that though, the next part of that is a bond that encompasses what it needs to. For me, that's a big part of it as well. Is a bond that encompasses what it needs to and will pass. Can that happen in May?
February.
Okay, can that happen? You're right, because we have to approve it in February. Can that happen
I think
by February 17th?
I think we're short-sighting ourselves.
Yeah, I think to give the attention it deserves, with the like Mr. Payne said, like Mr. Oz said, with the architects, because you brought up, they're going to bring up things that we're not seeing. It's going to be more comprehensive.
So here, I'll play devil's advocate maybe a little bit. Maybe that's not the right term, but so there's more. Let's just, what if we said, okay, let's just get those few things on a ballot in May and get a couple of things passed. Get that passed and fix those couple of things. Even though we're even hearing more, I mean, the requests that we're hearing and the things that are being brought up now are even more than that bond encompasses, right?
Well, my overriding assumption is that the bond language is the biggest thing that hurt us. I can't imagine that a College Station High School parent wants to put the health and safety of a
I don't think so
consolidated
either.
student, right? So I don't think
Right.
that was the issue. Is how it was articulated. So we have to have a accurately worded bond. That's not going to change. We need to have a comprehensive bond because we know that there was, as proper D was put in 2021, didn't address some of the things that were brought up tonight. We can all assume with some validity that the architects are going to address things that haven't been brought up tonight. So I think February, I think piecemeal measures creates that voter burnout, as well as getting a comprehensive and to educate, to allow the Tiger Club and what are the Purple Clubs called, to have that communication and have them see that. Because I can't imagine that even whether it's through summer camps or cross-sport interchanges, that the College Station high school athletes aren't seeing the Consol facilities. I think from a comprehensive standpoint, I don't think we have February is enough time to get on the bond language. I think while I never want to trust the legislature to solve our problems, there is hope that that these legislative priorities, if Mr. Rainey and Mr. Cassell are hearing what's going on, will affect that language we're allowed to put in. And it gives us much more time to be more articulate across the so-called purple and maroon divide versus rushing it to get something now that, like Mr. Ben says, a Band-Aid, and it just pushes a bigger problem on later.
Okay, that's
my
the conversation that I kind of wanted to force because, I mean, that's how I feel.
Well, Mr. Director, I also want to just point this out, and I haven't looked at the numbers But, another thing the school district did after that bond failed was hired a consultant to look at the numbers and look at why people voted against the bond and so forth. And again, I haven't looked at it in a while, but my recollection was that, for example, Castlegate, which is to I think pretty much all zoned to the College Station High School, voted for Prop D. So it wasn't necessarily the purple people are voting against this. And again, the natatorium, which again solely benefits Consol, that passed. So what's the, and I'm not sure the consultants even gave us a good answer on that.
That's what I think is the wording.
Yeah, the wording's horrible. The wording is just, yeah.
And so we can't campaign, but I think again, it has to be comprehensive. We can't say it's just one thing. The more you show that it's affecting all these things, and then that the community has the ability to educate their neighbors and the time. Because look what was on the ballot in 2021. Hell, look what was on the ballot in 2022. The TRE was page 35. So we're very thankful for that. But 2021, there's a lot of stuff up in the air. We're on the downslope of COVID. I think people were just exhausted. And the wording, like in legislative priorities, the wording was not accurate to what the need and the solution was. And we can mitigate that through education, which requires time.
And that's why I'm
have a plan for that education. And we've got the restrictions that Dr. Payne mentioned, which is we can't campaign. And again, I think that's all right, but we need some short-term solutions to deal with some of these issues.
Yeah, I would definitely like those to be looked into. But that's my fear. My fear is that we put this on the May ballot, and it only addresses a fraction of the things that we need to have fixed at Consol, right? And then if we will go for another, if we come up, okay, we've got more information, and we put it again in November, another bond on the ballot in November for athletic facilities that's more comprehensive, I'm afraid of what would happen to that next one. And
Can I propose, I don't know if it's parliamentary allowed, but to your point, because the parents need to know that we care. I know Mr. Martindale, I've seen the emails, you realize this is an issue.
Right.
You're going to find a solution for it. I trust in that. And Mr. Simak, and y'all realize it's an issue, right? So do we need to put forth a resolution so that the voters and the parents know, hey, we do care about this. We are going to look towards. We're not pushing it off. Do you think a resolution to that effect would be worthwhile in the next agenda, or is our word good enough that we've had a 55-minute discussion? I think we're all on the same page. It needs to be fixed. It's a matter of how to best do it so we don't fail at it.
Yeah, I think it was on the bond. It was on the 2021 bond, and that's why, because it is a necessity.
At that time, with that bond, we only did a certain amount of stuff because we were trying to make a bond that encompassed a lot of different areas of our education, and we were keeping it to where we did not increase taxes. And so only a portion of it was for athletics. Hopefully we can come up, the next bond can be different.
Well, but that's with the current bond requirements, that's.
I know it still has to be its own prop. I know it still has to be its own prop, but still there is a bottom line amount. And I think people do look at that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I'll stop.
So just to, everybody's clear. Talk about it again in February, but we're going to come up or try to come up with some types of solutions to deal with some of these immediate issues that these kids are dealing with.
I think that was the source of kind of why we wanted to put this on here was, and I appreciate all the student athletes showing up tonight and letting us know and voicing your concerns and sharing that, because now we kind of charge the athletic departments and facilities and them to help us out with addressing those concerns. So I think that's the plan to move forward. But going back to what we said, I mean, I don't think we need a resolution in writing or anything. We put it on the bond in 21. It's not that we don't want to do it. We're just trying to make sure we strategically do it in the proper way that benefits the school district and all the kids that are coming through. So we're going to come up with that plan as well as we move through and get that report in February. So if no one has anything else, everyone good? Okay, that'll bring us to item E. We'll adjourn for our workshop, be back at 7 for the meeting.